So, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of our Socrates Café podcast. Today, I'm very happy to be sitting down with a new friend of mine. Her name's Tamara, and she studied psychology, and she's got a lot of knowledge just from her life throughout um, different aspects of mental health, and I'm sure we can all, you know, have some sort of connection, to a greater or lesser degree when it comes to mental health and how we understand it. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to her about were the different methodologies around how to treat it, and the different practices that we see within the world. Now, m- just before we get into anything, my first experience with psychology came from listening to Carl Jung, and I loved listening to his any recorded lectures or audiobooks, or interviews by him, and it was all new to me. And of course, in the modern day, um, psychology has become quite, with like YouTube and all the other avenues for social media, it's become quite something in the forefront again. And whether you like the guy or not, I would say that some of that comes down to Jordan Peterson. And the reason I say that is just because he for me, from what I've watched from his lectures, is he's essentially just sounds like he's reading from a Carl Jung textbook and teaching his students about Carl Jung. And which is nothing new. So it's not like he's doing anything that's profound or brand new. It's just that he happens to have become the, I don't know how, the global face for psychology in this modern YouTube internet world. So I just wanted to sit down and have an interesting conversation with Tamara about psychology, things about her own life, which interested her in that field, and some other things that have interested myself, and where we might find areas where we both agree on, and maybe areas where we diverge on. I don't know. It's all about having a conversation. So the first question, first off, hi Tamara, and welcome to the podcast. I think people will enjoy it. So I've had many conversations with you, so I'm sure that people will enjoy listening to this. And my first question, I guess, for me would be to ask you the question, which I'm puzzled about within myself, is where did your desire, or this urge to get involved within psychology and understanding the human psyche, where did that stem from for yourself?
First time I became interested in it was I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And then I married a gentleman who was, I didn't know at the time I married him, he was a paranoid schizophrenic. And nobody told me, his parents didn't tell me, his sisters and brother didn't tell me. And 4 months into our marriage, I was with him for 2 years before that. 4 months into our marriage, he had an episode,
Right.
and it was pretty traumatic. I was up for 2 weeks. I mean, seriously, up for 2 weeks. I was playing the guitar for him so he could relax. He was up all night long moving furniture around and tying the shower curtains in knots and having hallucinations and delusions. And I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea. I was like 21 years old, and
Yeah.
I was kind of clueless, So time went on, and finally, I just, I had to get some sleep, and I didn't know what to do. And once he did tell me that he had a nervous breakdown and he didn't want to go back to the hospital because they gave him electric shock treatments and it scared him, It just made him really, made him sick basically. He lost a lot of his memory, and he said, I
Wow.
don't ever want to do that again. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
if something happens, I'll keep you home. What did I know, right? I didn't know anything. So I called his brother, and his brother said, oh, didn't anybody tell you? And I told him what was going on. I said, tell me what? That he's schizophrenic. I said, no, nobody told me that. This was like back in 67, this happened. And so his brother says, well, we're going to have to take him to the hospital. I felt really bad. I said, I promised him I wouldn't do that, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I felt guilty, but I said, well, okay, let's do it, And so he went with me to the hospital, and we took him to the hospital, and uh, we talked to his doctor, his psychiatrist, and the doctor told me exactly what was going on, and that it was a good thing that we brought him in. And his doctor
Mm-hmm.
was very nice. I mean, the psychiatrist was a very, very nice person. And we took him in, see what else happened. And then after that, he was in there for about, I guess, 2 weeks. And then he was pretty stabilized, and they brought him. They said he can come home on furlough, and it was a state hospital. That's why they called it furlough instead of he's getting out for a while. That's what they called it. And so
Yeah.
he came home, and that he didn't take his medication, which I didn't know. He didn't take it before he left, and he had another episode. We had gone to the movies, and he was hopping from seat to seat to seat to seat. And he couldn't sit still. So I said, finally, we're really going to have to leave. And I called a cab because I didn't drive at the time. So we went back home, and he wanted dinner. And I said, okay, and I took a meatloaf out of the refrigerator. I was going to warm it up. And he
Mm-hmm.
he grabbed a knife out of one of the drawers, and he says, "You're trying to kill me," and I'm, this is horrible. I mean, it was very traumatic. He says, "You're
Can
trying to
imagine.
kill me," and he started coming at me with this knife, and I just, something just told me to go like this, you know, and I said, "It's going to be okay," and I talked really softly to him. I said, "Everything's going to be all right," and I reached back and called his father on the phone. The phone was nearby. It was a wall phone because we didn't have cell phones in those days. And I called his dad, and I told him, oh God, excuse me, I told him to come after him, to come
Yeah.
get him, or maybe take him back to the hospital, or just come to stay with him for a few minutes, until he could do that and he calmed down because he knew how to
Yeah.
handle it,
Yeah.
And he he came over. I left, and my parents lived around the block, so I, was able to do that. Thank God. And he went back. He did go back to the hospital. It took 2 years for me to get a divorce because in Ohio you could not get a divorce on the grounds of insanity. And I
Mm.
really, after this happened, you know, I really just kept thinking about I really need to go into psychology. I want to help other people. And it was like it
Was a
was
lot of that coming from your own, like trying to understand your own situation as well?
right,
From what you were going through, that when you went into psychology, was it a part of trying to understand other people
right.
and a part of trying to understand not just
Myself
like I
also.
know your husband was another person
Right,
technically,
right,
but your own situation.
right.
Would that
Yeah,
be right?
that's right. It was wanting to find out why all of this happened to him. Because I didn't realize it could be inherited. I didn't realize anything. I didn't understand why he was the way he was, and I wanted to understand other people that had the same problem. I wanted to understand why I had problems, like why I couldn't focus at times, and why I would get depressed and anxious, and this would, I just wanted to understand. I wanted to know. I wanted the knowledge.
Yeah.
And so first I became, well, I was, see, first I became a cosmetologist or a beautician. Okay. And this kind of gave me a chance to talk to people. It sounds really weird, but my
No,
client,
I understand that. I mean, like my
yeah,
partner, well, I mean, there's a social aspect to all these things, when you
oh
go in
yes,
for certain treatments or whatever it is. There's the social aspect as well. So I understand what you mean.
okay. And I would speak to my clients, and they would tell me things, and I would say, "Wow, you know, like I got a little insight from each client." And I told them, I said, eventually I want to go back to school and be a psychologist, you know. And I was having, it was like I knew this was something I really needed to do, you know. Because I was helping people while I was doing their hair, And they said, "Yeah, this is really, an interesting thing that you're saying. Yeah, I probably maybe you should try that, Because I was already studying different things like astrology and stuff like that, and uh, I think I was doing meditation at the time, um, and I was reading a lot of I was reading books. I was reading books on psychology, like cybernetics, and other books. And finally, I said, I'm going back, and I went to started going to the community college. And the first
Okay.
thing, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying, okay, just in
Okay.
verbal nods.
And, and the first
Continue.
thing, I'm sorry, and the first thing that I learned when I was in community college, I had a really great professor, and he was like against labels. He was against the different the models that were being used in the psychiatry and in psychology. He was a psychologist himself. Wonderful,
Hmm.
wonderful person. I just, couldn't say enough about him. And he got me into the mode where I would go and tell everybody, about this, because I just really agreed with him. He was definitely against the medical model that they use in psychology and psychiatry these days.
Hmm.
And we would talk, even after class. And, I would say, I think that the reason they use these models is to keep people where they are, to keep them down,
Mm.
And he said, yeah, you're right. I said, they should call them the mental hospitals fill a bed instead of mental, health hospitals, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are owned by the state. And,
Mm.
the state, hey, money, and these people can't pay. So, we'll just keep them there. It's very, very strange setup.
Well, it gets even more complicated when you factor in that the state then outsource things, and certain practices like possibly the place that you were talking about was run by the state, but um, I don't know if the place that you're talking about today still exists, but other similar places that maybe originally were run by the state would then get outsourced to private companies for profit, which then makes psychotherapy a profit business as opposed to more of a focusing on the patient to find the correct answer and more of a, well, how do we keep the finance wheel turning? I guess that's a bit of a dystopian way to look at it. I'm not saying that all forms of psychotherapy and all institutions and places are like that, but it certainly begs the question as to where somebody's true heart lies when they're dealing with patients with very, very complex issues, as we all have very different individual psyches. And, for me to say that this is like why personally I would look at psychotherapy as more akin to um, things like philosophies from the East, because it's not necessarily a measurable science. Because I mean, they say that everybody is an individual, and we can prove it by our fingerprints.
That's
Even
right.
identical twins have different fingerprints. So then, of course, every individual is going to have a different psyche. And that's where I guess this whole nature and nurture argument comes in.
Right.
But it's one of these things which is classified as a science, but it's when you take when you take yourself back a bit, you kind of wonder how can it be classified as a science when measuring it is
Right.
going to be so broad. There's such a broad range
Right.
of things that you could put down as opposed to just here are the facts, we've crunched these numbers and this seems to work.
Right.
It doesn't work quite like that. Um, how was your experience when you were learning then about, you're telling me about this wonderful professor that you learned from. How was your experience with learning about all these new things that would have been new to you at the time? I guess just because of how nuanced a conversation it is, and it would have been at the time when you were studying it, and it still is to this day. But how did you feel going through that, and yeah, what was your mind thinking at the time, and was there any areas which you specifically took a deep interest in?
The first deep interest was when I was in community college in the first class that I took. Excuse me. And I was all during my classes at community college, I was able to work as an assistant. Now, this is interesting, as an assistant activities therapist in a state hospital.
Okay.
Because he liked the way I was progressing, he let me do that, and he got me the job at the hospital, and it was a learning experience. And to me, um, it depends on the way people that are in the hospitals are treated. Okay, I noticed that the staff, like the attendants and the psychiatrists treated the patients altogether different than the activities people and the occupational therapists and people like, those types of people. And they responded, the patients responded differently to us than they did to the therapists, the other therapists, and the attendants. To show to show you how, I used to have to go into the locked wards and teach, and teach them maybe how to play chess, or teach them how to play different types of games, or art, or poetry, how to write poetry, things like that, and I treated them like human beings, which they were,
Exactly.
and so I'd walk into the room, and every time I'd walk into the ward, they go, "Oh, here she comes! She's one of us." You're not. It was like an honor. I was feeling, wow, this is really cool. I just
To
loved
be
it.
welcomed in, as not just one of the onlookers, studying them, but be one of those, but like part of the group.
Right, right, exactly.
It gives you a completely different insight, I guess, than the patients who'd be skeptical and have that kind of, that eye open for the doctor. Yeah, I never thought about it like that. It gives you that. Do you know what? Actually, the way you described that, there reminds me very much of that movie. Oh, what was its name? Now, Awakenings with Robin Williams and Robert De Niro,
Oh, I
and it's
love
about
that. That was so good.
it's an
Yeah,
amazing movie, phenomenal,
right.
and it was his approach, showcased in the movie was being more direct and being more involved in the patient's life rather than going just ticking a box up. That they
Yeah,
fit this category, they fit this category. Okay, well, then we'll just give them this bunch of medication. He got involved and he managed to figure something out which had been overlooked.
right.
And and from what you just said, it kind of reminds me of the way that Robin Williams' character was presented there. He got himself involved with the patients and got to know them on a personal level rather than, I don't know, I guess being, like I said, the outsider who they're all skeptical and dubious of. What was it like for you then? Did you got intimate with these people then?
Yeah, I mean, I sit there and we talk to each other, and I'd find out what they were all about, and like when they came there, and different things about them, and they appreciated that. I wasn't
Yeah,
there for that sort of therapy. I just wanted to get to know them, and they're people, and I was, and this is what my professor was trying to push. These are people. These aren't like beds. You know what I'm trying to say? They're not. They're not stupid. Uh, they're most of them are really intelligent people. Like, I mean, even I can't say you just treat people that are intelligent like that. But I worked also with people that uh, this was further along in my studies. I worked in nursing homes with people with development that who were developmentally delayed, and
mhm.
you shouldn't treat them poorly either, of course, because they're also people, you know, and
But that's it. Just like you said, I'm sorry to just interject there, but it's, as you said, there are people, and as you said, there are people who may have delays and whatever it is when it comes to cognitive behaviours, but it's their patients, and if you're going to treat a patient, if you're going to remember that these patients are people, then you also
Right.
have to be patient with them
That's
and
right.
let them open up when their time is right, because
Right.
when you try to force something on somebody, you're not going to see their true self emerge. And if you're patient with the patient,
That's right.
then they'll finally open up, and then you'll get to understand them more.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's like okay, so I was this was another thing that when I was working in the nursing home. It was a county home in Iowa. Oh boy, I'll tell you what. And I was working with. They were mostly all developmentally delayed, and they were so sweet. I mean, I just enjoyed that job so much. But they were all being, unfortunately,
Mm,
excuse me, and they were given Thorazine, which was that's the most horrible stuff that you ever want to give anybody. You know, you can't function,
what's
you can't talk, you can't do anything. And
what? So just to interrupt you there. What is Thorazine? What type of medication is that?
it's supposed to be an antipsychotic drug, okay?
Right.
And they're giving this to people to keep them from, I guess, acting out, you know, and
Hmm.
they were falling asleep. They were overdosing them, okay? And I'm trying to teach these guys, and they were falling asleep on the table. I mean, they were just like this, and
Wow.
horrible. And so I went to the patient advocate, right?
Hmm.
And I told him, I said, what's going on? I said, oh, my patients are falling asleep on me. I know it's not me, you know. And I said, there's something wrong. I said, I think they're being overdosed. And she said, oh, okay, I'll go, talk to the doctor or whatever, Yeah, right. She was
Yeah.
a friend of the management, right? Which is supposed to be a no-no. Ombudsmen are not supposed to be friends with anybody. They're just supposed to be helping the patient.
Yeah.
So,
I'd agree with you 100% on that.
right. So anyway, of course the management called me into the office and they said, you're making waves. And the doctor knows what he's doing. And I said, well, maybe this is 25% of his examination. He failed. Because doctors only have to pass 75% of their examination, you
The
know?
doctor might know what he's doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what he's doing is right,
Right,
or
exactly right.
what they're doing is right. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that somebody with a higher authority has declared something, and this is what they're going to run with. And who are you to question? Which for me doesn't seem right. As I mentioned before, is that psychotherapy and psychology, it doesn't seem to fall in line with the standard sciences, especially when you're talking about physics, mathematics, biology,
Right.
um, and chemistry, and you see these things which are essentially matter of fact that you put out on paper, and it's hard to dispute them, or it's impossible or very hard to dispute them. Whereas something like analysing the mind of an individual psyche who's grown up with different experiences from you and maybe different biology from yourself, and trying to diagnose that just doesn't seem right when you have somebody who is in a position of authority to say, well, I'm the doctor, and this is what the doctor thinks, so this is what I think, and
Expert.
that's
Expert.
correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
exactly, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Expert syndrome, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I went, all right. So I went back out and I knew they were going to do something, you know. I went back out and I was trying to teach this lady who was considered a cretin. Okay. She has a small head and a big body, you know. And I was trying to teach her she wanted to learn how to play checkers. Okay. So I was
Okay,
teaching her and she learned. They said that she never learned anything. Why are you bothering? This is what they told me. I said, she'll learn. I said, it's going to be all right. I know she's going to learn. And once they took her off that Thorazine, she was fine. No wonder she couldn't learn anything. You know, she was drugged out, you know.
exactly.
And,
Yeah, it's like something you mentioned there. It's something that we spoke about. I don't know if we spoke about this on the recording so far, but obviously in previous conversation we spoke about ADHD and one of these things. It's like, well, how can somebody say, oh, they'll never learn something? Um, they don't know what that person's interested in. And what I found, certainly with my experience of growing up as a child who was diagnosed as a child with ADHD, I was never put on any medication.
right?
I think there was a bit of a dispute between my parents as to whether I should be put on medication or whether it was something that should just be left to kind of run its, we'll see what happens. And it was eventually decided that I wouldn't go on any medication, and I'm happy. I'm glad about that. I mean, obviously, we only have one timeline. It's not like we can go and view a real screen of what the outcomes would have been if a, seeing either decision being made and then what the outcomes would be. But I found that for me, that I was just a hyperactive child who I guess didn't have much time for things I wasn't interested in. But as
Tell
soon
me
as somebody
something like
found the
that.
right thing for me to be interested in,
Right?
I was zoned in and I was there and I wouldn't leave that place. I was completely there and I would
Right.
soak all the information up like a sponge. And for
Right.
me, that first thing was music.
Oh
It became
yeah.
other creative things like making websites. I mean, initially it was music. We
Wonderful.
started as with a band, and then we we needed we thought we needed a website as a band, and I took that on as my little thing, and I made websites for the band, and if I didn't have that outlet, if it wasn't for me finding these little creative outlets, I probably would have been very misunderstood. And I think that that's the problem with a lot of ways of looking at people and discussing things and like saying, oh, this person can't learn that. How do you know? Have you presented them with that situation before? Have they knocked it back before? Or are we just going to draw the line because we've tried, 60 things? So we'll draw the line and say that, we can't teach them anything. Or could we go that, well, let's just try another 10 and just see if one of them is the thing for them. And it's like when you were talking about teaching this person checkers, something must have grabbed them.
Oops.
And
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. My 4 o'clock is yeah, I have to
I
go.
tell you what we'll do, Tamara, is we'll round this up as part one, and we'll follow this up as part two of the podcast. Yeah, so see when talking about ADHD, um, what is your experience of it and your um, experience of what other people have told you about it? Because for me, where I see it as being somebody else who's not experienced it, but studied it, telling somebody else what they're experiencing, which seems odd to me. And so I just wondered how your experience was or has been with the whole process of being diagnosed or told you have that
Yeah.
to, yeah. what manifests as well? What notable things would you say that you'd classify as, oh, that must be one of the things that they're seeing as being part of ADHD?
Well,
Yeah.
I, I was diagnosed when I was 62 years old. Um,
Right. So very late on in your life then.
I,
Not.
they didn't know what it was when I was young. They thought I was just a little bit weird. That was like my teachers used to say, "Oh, she's daydreaming again." She's not listening. Stuff like that. They didn't know why. They thought I was just not paying attention. And then I used to throw tantrums when I got anxious. My mother thought I was just being oppositional. Well, I guess I was. This part of ADHD.
Yeah.
And they didn't know. My father just kind of like gave up. He was like he wanted to teach. He was teaching me how to sing, and he kept saying, "You're being affected. You're being affected. You're not doing what you're supposed to do." I was like 4 years old, you know.
Yeah. See, this is one of my, I guess, one of my gripes with the whole, even the classification of ADHD, or even the way we put time limits on certain conditions and call them like late developers in certain things, because everybody learns at a different rate. And I mean, for me, now I know I have grown up in the aftermath of when I left school. The internet was just, you could get access to any information you wanted, and that was the way my brain worked. So I became very knowledgeable about a vast array of topics because I was interested and I wanted to do it, not because I was forced to do it and I had to do a certain thing or be this knowledgeable in this subject by a certain year or a certain age, because of course, the systematic
Right,
um,
exactly, yeah.
way you rise through the education system. So,
Mhm.
but I do also think about, but where would I be if the internet didn't exist? Because I don't imagine myself as being somebody who would make a conscious effort to go out to a library and find the answer to a question that I had that just popped into my head.
Right,
It's very easy to do that now because we have the internet, but you know, um, the chances of that happening, I would literally have to be walking past the library
right.
as the question popped into my head to even think about going in to get the answer.
Oh
But
yeah. My mother says, "You need to read more. You need to read more. Why aren't you, why aren't you reading?" And oh, I didn't have the patience to sit down with a book and actually read it, at first. But I learned when I started going to school, like when I got a little bit higher up in the grades. Then I started enjoying reading and wanting to know more things and stuff like that. But when I was little, like really, you know,
that's
um,
it, because there's so many things when you're young, your attention, whether you've got supposed ADHD or not, your attention is pulled in so many directions that you have to kind of make a choice.
right,
And for some people, that choice is um, a social direction. Some people, that's an academic direction. For
right,
some people, that's a passion of theirs. For some people, they just kind of go with a like mob mentality. That's what I feel kind of happens amongst people when they're at school, because they're not really at we're trying to educate people who are not yet matured as people,
right,
and but then we have this kind of cut off point where, well, if you haven't learned it by now, well, off you go into the world and struggle. Or I just I find it. weird that we have this kind of cut-off point, and it's another thing that baffles me as well. I think it's probably changing a bit to a degree, but that baffles me is that the idea even of having a degree in a specific field means anything anymore, considering how much information is available to
Right.
people on the internet that could teach themselves in that field to be a lot more knowledgeable than anybody who went and did the standard, you know, progression of the levels and years at university to
Right.
be awarded with a degree and that to mean something. And it's it's yeah, and that's where I kind of wonder, where is this level that we decide that, oh, there's a problem here. And just to get back to ADHD, for me it was I guess it was realizing that what I needed to do was just channel my energy into the thing that made me happy, that I
Right.
enjoyed doing,
Yes.
and that was what is how I think that any child that you look at and come across and you think that child has ADHD, is that's what you do. You then maybe look at that individual child and you don't take notice of the things that they're not interested in. It's the things that you notice that they are interested in. You go, right, that's what I'm going to note down. And then we're going to explore that and see where that energy goes. Because for me, it was music. And as soon as music
Right.
became a thing for me and I was able to express it,
Right.
whether it be on my own or with friends, I was zoned in and I was there and I was gone and I was completely with it and very focused.
There. Yeah.
And
You're there.
for everybody, it
Yeah.
can be, you know, everybody's interests are different.
Right.
So for some person, it may be a certain subject, it may be something like carpentry, it could be boat making, it could be
Painting.
building, it could be
Yeah.
fishing,
Oh,
absolutely anything. You just need to find that thing. And I think that's what maybe possibly, I wonder how you feel about this. Maybe one of the problems of our educational system is that we
okay.
have too broad a range of fields that people need to
Right.
have a know-how on that don't really matter to their
That's
lives
right.
afterwards. When
Yes.
you should maybe find out where what are they interested in just now. They can always change it later, but
Right.
what are they interested in just now? What are they passionate about that makes them happy?
Oh, I
Um,
agree. Totally. Right.
I mean, one thing that for me, I think, I wonder what you think about this, but this is an idea that I heard and it made me think, and it's become my philosophy on life and how I think everybody should live their life. And is that you should always work to try and be better at whatever it is you're doing. But there's two types of work in the world. One is a job,
Hmm.
and that is just a piece of work that nobody wants to do, and that's why somebody else is willing to pay you to do it.
Right. Exactly.
And then there's a vocation. And a vocation is something that you would probably be doing if you had the time, or probably already are doing.
Right.
But if you're doing it as your profession as well, you just happen to be making money out of it. And that, if you
Oh,
manage to get that, that's when you've struck gold. That's when you've hit the kind of, I don't know, the best place in life. That. But yeah, I mean, I've waffled on there a little bit. But what are your thoughts on what I just said? I guess.
I'll tell you what. When I have a son who's also ADHD, lucky boy. You know, but I'll tell you,
Yeah,
he
I
is
would say
lucky.
that.
He
Lucky
is
boy.
lucky, and I'll tell you why. And he's lucky he got me for a mother because I understood, what was going on. And so for some reason, I had something came to me that he was supposed to be a musician because when I was carrying him as an infant, a fetus, he kept kicking to the music, you know. And I said, I know what he's going to be when he grows up. And true, he's doing it, you know.
He
And
had rhythm in utero. He had rhythm already.
yeah, yeah. And you know, I got him his first guitar. My mother got him his electric guitar, and he just ran with it. I mean, he's got albums out and he's got all sorts of stuff going on, and he's been all over the world with it. And
Amazing.
yeah, I mean, I haven't even been out of this country except for Canada, you know. And he's wonderful. I mean, he's just wonderful musician. With me, I wanted to be a musician, but it didn't kind of work out that way because my father kind of took it out of me. But my I paint. I'm an artist,
All
and
right. Okay.
I do portraits. I do people's portraits. I do animal portraits. I do all sorts of stuff like that. And I also study psychology, and I study Eastern religions, and I study all that stuff, you know. But that's what I enjoy. I enjoy doing that, and that's why, And I also study. I have my own profession, my own. I was studying to be a rabbi, but
Okay.
yeah, that didn't work out too well because the person that was teaching me was having problems too because she's my age and she just couldn't do it anymore. I don't think. I mean, I don't even bring it up anymore because I don't want to hurt her feelings or anything. But
Hmm.
I study on my own. You know, I enjoy it, so I study it. You know,
Yeah. I mean,
and
that's for me. That's I think what it's all about. Is just constantly questioning and not questioning and letting the question go. Is always trying to find that answer. And it's one of the beautiful things I think the internet has afforded is it's you don't need to, like I said, have access to libraries or vast databases or anything. The database is literally at your fingertips. And then things like Facebook and things like this bring people together to talk about different ideas and experiences with, like us when talking about ADHD. It's like we're talking about something which has been classified, which, like I said before, it's like, well, it's like you're trying to make it a science as if it's a condition, but
right,
it's like the amount of variables to take into consideration when trying to look at a certain psyche over a person's life and decide that yes, that okay, I figured it out. This is what it is. It's ADHD.
D,
And reduce it to four letters like that. It makes you think, what?
yeah,
No, how about it's just that people are different and people have different interests.
right,
Um, and sometimes you can, like, even, it's like you said as well, when you're talking about music there, people can have interests and passions which get destroyed when they're young because they're not allowed to do it in the way that they want to do it because there's structure, there's form,
right,
and um, there was. I mean, I remember listening to someone talking about a piano teacher who used to um, put like a rubber or an eraser over their fingers so
right,
that
right, right.
that
Yeah,
if it would fall off, then they would get hit because they've got to keep their hands at certain
certain way. Yeah, you had to.
way
Right,
to be able to play. But then and they were completely put off by learning because of that method of teaching.
right.
Whereas the other teacher that they had taught in such a way where it was like just let your hands drop onto the. Don't care about what notes you hit on the
Right.
piano. Just let your hand drop on there,
Mhm.
and then when you're playing, keep the rhythm.
Right,
If
right,
you hit a bum note, don't think about it or stop and panic or start again. Just keep playing. If you hit a bum note
right,
and you hit, the wrong note, just keep that rhythm going
right,
slowly, and then you speed it up, and the better and more
right.
fluid it will become. Um, like muscle memory, and well, that's my experience from learning drums. But this is, I think that people get their enthusiasm for things. Maybe people who have ADHD or been told this is what you have, you
Yeah,
ADHD. So
you know,
here's something for you to blame
right.
things on. We're just not nurtured in the right way, and like that's an example. You wanted to get into
Yeah,
music, but you were put off by the way you were taught.
yeah. My father called. I mean, he says, "Oh, you're never going to amount to anything. You're just an idiot." It's like really, and just stuck in my head for a really long time. Then I went to college. He wouldn't send me to college because he said I was just going to go there to get my MRS degree. You know, wanted to get married. That wasn't the point. That's not why I was going. I wanted to learn, and he refused to send me. So I sent myself, and I worked and I went to school, and and I almost graduated. That's a real sore spot with me. And I really worked my butt off, excuse me, in school. And I got A's and B's, and I proved to everybody that when I really wanted to do something, I could do it, and I was hyper focused on it. And I mean, I one class I had, you had to do 16 essays in 6 weeks, and I did it, and I
Wow,
ended up getting an A+.
well done.
So
It's
anybody
quite a challenge.
right, anybody out there that thinks they can't do anything because they have ADHD, don't even think it twice. Don't you can do anything
No,
you
I
want to
think
do.
that's it. It's exactly, and I think that is because you wanted to learn about this specific subject
Right,
that
exactly
your
right.
ADHD helps you
Right,
in that way, rather than it
right,
being like, oh, this is the career choice that
right.
my family did, and it's just kind of natural that I'm going to go into psychology as well, and they're not really their heart's not in it. And there still can be this level of, well,
Yeah,
I'll still memorize what I need to know. Um, but then that's all they become when they become, let's say, professors or clinical psychologists. They're just repeating
right,
what's already been said,
right,
um, rather than adding something new, which I think comes from people like we're talking about with that kind of more creative ADHD mindset, as we can classify it, where when somebody's passionate about something and can think about things in other ways and
right.
not just conforming to what the standard
Exactly right.
model is that's been explained to them.
You know,
People question things.
right. You know, when when I was in school, I mean, when you go for like your PhD or your master's, or they want you to write something that came from yourself, but you have to do the research first to see what's out there and then add to it. You know what I'm trying to say? That's what
Yeah.
the dissertation's about.
A thesis, and that's it. Yeah, it's not. It has to be original. It can't just be just rehashing somebody else's work. But
Right,
I don't know. I don't think I've ever personally. Um, I mean, do you? Here's a question I would like to put to you. When it comes to psychology, and looking at the works of just the two major ones, is Freud and Jung. Now, and more particularly Jung, would you say that anybody between when he died up until now has added anything new to psychology that's all right, but added anything new to psychology that is essentially not just being re-spoken by professors in universities at the moment? I know that's quite a difficult question, but
okay.
I mean, I
What,
think it's a
okay,
difficult question because personally, I don't believe there has been, but that's why I'm asking you because
okay.
I'm
Can you
not,
repeat?
not
Can
entirely
you kind
sure.
of repeat what you
Yeah,
said? Because
sorry.
a call came on, just, and I had to decline it because this person calls at the worst times.
Oh, don't worry about it. So my
Uh,
question was really this. So if we look at the works of the two most notable psychologists of the modern era, so Freud and Jung. Now, have you experienced in your academic career in the study of psychology anything new that hadn't already been introduced by, more specifically, Carl Jung? Because
oh
what I
yeah,
feel is that everybody is just basically a new voice to speak what's already been written to students who want to listen and learn their degrees. Or do you think there
there's
was anything new that's been added?
there's a psychologist. His name was he did Rogerian theory. His name was, I think, Carl Rogers, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, and he just used like normal conversation, like we're talking, talking to somebody and not making their patients feel intimidated. That was one of his theories that, you're going to get more out of somebody who doesn't feel intimidated than, you can't, let's see,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, what's that quote? You get
Well,
somebody that
if you
was
put somebody in a corner,
Senator.
essentially, if you back somebody in a corner, you're not going to get anything out of them.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And yeah, I liked him. He's very good. Uh I have a psychologist who is uses that theory, and she's wonderful. I mean, just, she's great.
Yeah.
And I guess everybody's different, but I happen to like that type of thing because I was intimidated too much during my life. So,
Well, that's it. And I think that different method. I guess it's come back to my whole point is that can we call this a science rather than, I mean, does it fall into its own different category because everybody's so different. I mean, you have your own approach due to your experience and how you've felt and what has also kind of benefited you, and other people may have other,
right,
I don't know, say more direct approaches that may seem potentially to some people as maybe not the right method. Say that it's more a stern approach, but yet it also produces results. It's
right,
and that's I think it all comes down to knowing your patient or the person you're talking with,
right,
and also knowing that there is a complete infinite amount of variables which could have affected this person's psyche from the moment they were a baby and then developed a concept of themselves to where they are now in whatever situation that may be. And that could be from the most horrible situations in the world, like
mhm,
a person who's on death row for committing heinous acts, or it could be
mhm,
somebody who's, lost everything and been a saint all their life. And you think, well, everybody is essentially, when we're born, we're like blank slates, tabula rasa. I'm sure I
right,
heard that
right,
phrase. And
mm,
when we're born, we develop into who we are, and we learn all that. But behind everybody is the same before you had a concept of yourself. And
right,
I think that one of the interesting things I wanted to talk to you about Carl Jung was his idea of the shadow, which I think is, for me, is his way of trying to conceptualize the idea that all things good and bad that can happen or can be done by human beings can be done by you, and that you have that capacity for that within you, given the right situations that you find yourself in, and nurture, how you're nurtured through the world and the world that you're brought into, the nature
Right.
of it. And I just wanted to speak to you about that idea of the shadow, and what you thought of that insight that he proposed.
Okay. Well, we okay in my belief system. Okay, we believe that we're born to be in this life to learn lessons and to actually learn from the lessons that we have. It's also we have free choice. We
Mhm,
can either follow, you know, uh, the good or do what we're not supposed to do. and there are laws, things like that. And if you do, even in the secular world, if you do something you're not supposed to do, there are consequences, right? You know, so or like something break a law. Okay, let's say, all right, and you learn from it eventually. Maybe some people don't though, so they keep on going and going and going. Well, let's say let somebody you do it to yourself. Let's say you do something bad to yourself, like you you have a okay, you had a bad childhood, let's say, but you can learn.
mhm.
Okay, you can learn
Yeah.
from that, and especially when you get older, because when you're still a child, it's not real easy. Okay, but later on, you say to yourself, well, "There's got to be a way out of this." I have to learn. But some people just keep making the same mistakes, one after another. They get into bad
Mhm.
marriages, they get into this, and they don't realize that a lot of it is because of their own mindset, you know. And when they finally realize that, it's like, oh, okay, I think I got it now, and things get better for them, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but everybody's here. This is way I believe. Everybody's here to learn lessons, and good lessons and bad lessons. Yeah, this is what I should do. No, this is what I shouldn't do. So and
Yeah.
it stays with you, hopefully.
And I think that, like, because of course throughout history, I guess it's been a lot of it has all been down to laws. Now, whether that be laws of the uh, empire or kingdom of that region at the time, or whether those be like, religious laws enshrined within people's
Mhm,
beliefs. But these,
mhm.
whether, say if we just take the whole God idea as like not not being a direct word of God saying this is the laws of what how people should act, that it is essentially just could be us just as it's continuously changed. There was the Ten Commandments, right? That's just Ten
Right, right.
Commandments. You can
I guess with the
whittle a
Ten
whole
Commandments.
whittle a bunch of them down just into one. So it's really just about um putting no other God before God. Um, but the ones that actually come down to the things that you should not do,
Right,
um, also that's increased over time, but weren't
right.
put into law. So
Mhm,
this has to come about through just feeling and um, and also empathy, because the feeling and to know when something's wrong within
mhm.
yourself is
Right.
very easy, but it's different to when you've got other people around you to say that's wrong, and for other people to have that feeling of empathy to understand
Mhm.
that something's wrong. And
Right.
so society changes over time through this little thing called Jiminy Cricket, which is
The empathy is
conscious.
a lot better than telling somebody they're wrong, because then they can just go, ugh. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that anything has been wrong. I think everything's an evolution. It's figuring out what's
Why?
worked and what's not worked,
Right,
what provides for the most optimal situation. And
right,
it's, I
exactly.
guess, required or look sought after by all parties. Because then, if you just want to be a normal civilized person and just going about your day, then you need to be given enough freedom to not rise up against the government. But if you want to be
Mm,
involved in the government and get involved in all that shenanigans, then you have to be dedicated to that, style of life. So yeah, it's uh, it's a bit of a mad world, and it's quite mad. Do you know, I would be, I don't know if it's quite an interesting idea, but it would be quite funny to see live broadcast each member of the House of Parliament or Congress sitting down with a psychologist for an hour, and it being broadcast
well,
live to the
you know
whole
what?
country and the world.
Right. Do you know what? I was thinking about something similar, that, you know, they need to screen people that are heading the countries. Okay. There needs to be a psychological screening for people
Mm,
in the legislature, uh, and people that, presidential or prime ministers or whatever you call, there needs to be psychological screening, to make sure, and they can, that the kind of screening that they can't play. You know what I'm trying to say? People like to play
yeah.
the system. I don't care who the person is. There's always somebody that's going to play the system. You know.
Well, maybe
So
I mean, that's the person who passes with 100% marks is the person that should be banned from doing it because they studied the test that hard to pass it.
yeah, it's like, I mean, let's look who's running the shop in a bunch of these countries.
I don't
Right.
know. I really don't know. I just see talking. For me, I just believe that the people that we see in the TV, whether you call them presidents or
Right.
kings, queens, or whatever, in this world of corporations, that they're just really the
You know,
mouthpieces.
I really hate to see people in power hurting their own people. There are
Or
people that are in power that hang women just for not wearing something on their heads,
yeah,
covering up, not covering up their hair.
yeah,
Truth, and that's scary.
it is,
And
and I guess I like we of course should be grateful for what the freedoms that we have.
yes,
Also be
definitely.
aware, like I mean, there are a lot of people in worse situations than us, and we know that. But the freedoms that we have, we should be aware um, that when they get eroded, because well, I think it was Huxley. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said that the next great revolution is when people learn to love their servitude, so they don't feel that they're slaves, but
Right.
fallen into a system where they essentially are slaves, but they don't realize that they're slaves because they love what's being served to them. They're served what the servitude that
Yeah, it's called
what
brainwashing.
yeah, and
Yes.
it's yeah. What do you think about today's kind of world with technology and the way I mean I'm always obsessed the way the youth
You know,
go about their lives. Do you
scary.
have much hope? Or,
It's scary in some ways, because there, like this AI thing, it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. Okay.
Mm,
Uh,
definitely.
the good part of it is they're using it in medicine, and it could help a lot of people with cancer and different, things like that, different health problems. But then you have the lies that AI can tell. It takes videos and it twists them. When you see things like on Newsbreak or whatever, a lot of that is
Yeah.
not right.
No, I know. I mean, it's certainly, I've already decided that 2021 is my cut-off point to believe the end. Like, say if I hear a new song found in a basement by AC/DC with Bon Scott before he died, and none of the members of AC/DC are left alive anymore, then 2021's my kind of cut-off point. If anything after that, I don't, wouldn't, I'd just initially be skeptical of it's AI. But you're right. AI can go one or two ways. It can either go like the way you said, the the good way, which is the pure, because I think it all comes down to who's the person at the helm of it. So you could have the lone scientist with a lab in their basement trying to find a cure for cancer, or you could have the lone virologist that wants to create a virus that destroys the world or figure out how to make a nuclear bomb.
Exactly
And
right. We already have
it's
that, so
yeah, it's a mad
not
world.
here, but uh,
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think eventually are you on that this kind of 50-50 side of what way it'll go? Just kind of wait and see, or do you think that it will
well,
end
I'll
up
tell you
being
what.
a net benefit to the world?
It could go. It's really on the edge. I mean, now banks, because of AI, can take people's money. If they can track, people can track what you're doing financially from your bank now. Even
Mhm.
just by putting cash in there.
Well, I mean that's already existed. It's who has access to it and or who we're getting down kind of deep into deep state stuff here, but who has access to it and who is allowed access to it without you knowing?
There's no
Because
privacy.
that's
There's no
already been.
privacy.
I mean,
Right.
your credit card. As soon as you start, as soon as there was a paper trail, that's
Right.
it.
Well,
I
paper
think
trail, and
AI
now
will just, I don't know, possibly accelerate things, and I don't know. I guess we'll see where it goes, but
they're
maybe.
making currency now, making currency, in the mint that has little, I guess, oh God, what am I trying to say? Megabytes in it or something that you can trace?
You mean the online currencies, cryptocurrencies, or are you meaning?
Megabytes or that if you give somebody money like
Oh,
cash,
like paper money, it will have
paper
something
money,
within it that
yeah,
will let you know where the money's been.
yeah, scary, scary
Oh,
stuff. It's like not right.
that is.
Lack of privacy. That's
I'd
not
never
good.
even thought of that. I heard about that before. That's just it's made me think, because there's all this, everybody, there's this whole pushback on the world turning to changing and not using paper money anymore and switching to digital. It'll just be in a digital currency and you just use your cards
Right.
and there was a lot, there's, say what you want about that and those ideas, but I never thought about that. Even if you just keep physical money around, you
Hmm.
just incorporate little small bits of technology like that, and
Yeah.
the central banks
Yeah.
know exactly where you are and where you spend your
That's
money and what
right.
you do with your time.
Yep. Yep. That's
Oh,
right. I
we're living
know.
in a day where privacy is just disappearing,
Yeah. Well, George
floating away.
Orwell. Here we are. George Orwell.
Well, I think it's not so much George Orwell. I think just to go back to Aldous Huxley, I think he got it more right because it's George Orwell's presentation or representation was more of a dystopian future, uh, you know, using force to to employ it among people, even with that being just like your neighbours grassing you up or telling the cops what you said. But whereas nowadays it's the people have came to kind of love their servitude and what they've been offered, so they don't want to speak up about it. But anyway, it's a very I don't know, a positive note to end on. Maybe we should
No.
bring this to an end because we've been talking now for a while now. Must be about over an hour anyway. So um, we'll put this up, and I'm sure we can have a part two. I'm sure you and I will have many conversations in between any recorded ones that we do. But
Right. Be good. Yeah, I guess we could think about a whole bunch of new things. That would be fun.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure. I'm sure the conversations will never die. Um, but yeah, well, look, everybody, thank you very much again for tuning in. If you've made it to the end, me and Tamara really enjoyed the conversation, having fun doing it. And if you've enjoyed it as well or got anything
Oh,
from
good.
it, then we're just happy about that. But yeah, everybody, hope to see you on the next episode, and thanks again.
Live long and prosper.